Just like conservatives and Republicans did with Martin Luther King Jr., here's what you have to look out for. They're going to try to sanitize Nelson Mandela's legacy. So you remember how King, for example, famously said, "My own government is the biggest purveyor of violence in the world today." And he was staunchly opposed to Vietnam, and he was just all around incredibly progressive and unapologetic about it. Well, over time, conservatives tried to mangle that legacy and make it like, oh, no, he was actually very conservative. In fact, he was a registered Republican, and he was totally on the side of all of us. Right, Martin Luther King would be a Rush Limbaugh fan if he was around today. Spare me. So here's some parts of Mandela's legacy that make him even more awesome than what mainstream America will tell you. He's even better than you think. So first of all, he was a diehard supporter of labor unions. He visited the Detroit Auto Workers Union when touring the U.S., and he said, quote, "Sisters and brothers, friends and comrades, the man who is speaking is not a stranger here. The man who is speaking is a member of the UAW. I am your flesh and blood." So this is a guy who was committed to social justice and economic justice. On the issue of Israel-Palestine, he said, quote, "Israel should withdraw from all the areas which it won from the Arabs in 1967, and in particular, Israel should withdraw completely from the Golan Heights, from South Lebanon, from the West Bank." So here's a guy who definitely is flying in the face of conventional wisdom here in the U.S., where the position here that's taken by our government is Israel should just have absolutely everything. Also, Mandela supported Fidel Castro and Yasser Arafat. This is a no-no in the U.S., and when the West acted shocked over this, he basically said, don't just assume all your enemies are my enemies. They're actually helping with our struggle in South Africa for equality. What the hell have you done about this issue? And now we get to my favorite parts of his legacy, the controversial parts, so to speak. I think these are some of the best parts. He blasted the Iraq War and American imperialism. He called Bush, quote, "a president who has no foresight, who cannot think properly," and he accused him of, quote, "wanting to plunge the world into a holocaust by going to war in Iraq. All that Mr. Bush wants is Iraqi oil," he said. He saw the Iraq War as a greater problem of American imperialism around the world. Quote, "if there is a country that has committed unspeakable atrocities in the world, it is the United States of America. They don't care for human beings." Wow. Now, is this something you've heard in all of the conversations about how great Nelson Mandela is? Now, again, he is a great man. And also, there's a good argument to be made. He's making a lot of sense when he says that, too. The U.S. should not excuse our own ills. I mean, the war in Iraq killed over 100,000 civilians. What, should there be no punishment for that? Should we just look the other way and pretend like it never happened? Should we act like we haven't been overthrowing democratically elected governments all over the world and putting in authoritarian regimes since the end of World War II? No, I mean, I guess you can, but you're shoving your head in the sand and you're not acknowledging reality. What Nelson Mandela is saying is acknowledge reality. And also, let's fight against this and try to end American imperialism. Now, the second to last thing here, there's two more points about him that I think speak, just volumes of the character he has. He called freedom from poverty a, quote, fundamental human right. Quote, "massive poverty and obscene inequality are such terrible scourges of our times in which the world boasts breathtaking advances in science, technology, industry, and wealth accumulation." So he's saying we can do all these things. It's a point that I've made on the show before. Not to compare myself to him, because I've done nothing, not one zillionth of what he's done. But it's the argument that, well, we could put somebody on the fucking moon. On the fucking moon! And get them back safely, but we can't find out a way to give everybody health care. We can't find out a way to give people a living wage. Nonsense. It's bullshit. And he also says that ending poverty is a basic human duty. Quote, "overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It is an act of justice. It is the protection of a fundamental human right, the right to dignity and a decent life. While poverty persists, There is no true freedom. Can he be more crystal clear? Now, finally, the last point, and maybe the most controversial point he made, but I think he's 100% right. He said, while calling for Osama bin Laden to be brought to justice, Mandela said, quote, "The labeling of Osama bin Laden as the terrorist responsible for those acts before he had been tried and convicted could also be seen as undermining some of the basic tenets of the rule of law." Now, here's why that's such a profound sentiment. If you actually believe in democracy, if you actually believe in the rule of law, there are no exceptions to it. You never get to throw out the law book for a temporary amount of time and say, well, forget it, for this one person we don't need to have due process, we could just kill him and call it a day. No. If you actually believe in the idea of civilization, modern civilization, being moral and ethical, being above the Neanderthals that we want to be above, right? Being above that level of barbarism, well, the way to do that is simple. The way to do that is to actually abide by rule of law, even when it's inconvenient. This is a guy who shines a light on what we could be at our highest aspirations, and we would do well to listen to not only some of the words of Nelson Mandela, all of the words of Nelson Mandela.